And at some point, she left the ward and went to the bathroom.
Yeah.
Apparently, she would have felt something bulging in her vagina.
Yeah.
And she sent her finger and
To
kept
take
on
it out.
pulling. And actually, she was pulling out her own intestines.
Oh my God. In 2019, the Pan-African Medical Journal investigated abortion practices in the city of Boyer, southwest region of Cameroon. Their findings actually showed that the greatest reason why women carried out abortions was for their desire to stay in school, of course, amongst other minor reasons. If I should ask you, is abortion legal in Cameroon? I am almost certain that your response will be to the negative. But do you know that the law in Cameroon actually permits safe abortions in certain cases? Well, on today's episode of VitalTalks, we shed light on access to safe abortions in Cameroon. Go nowhere, we'll be right back. Welcome back. Thank you so much for your loyalty to VitalTalks on YouTube. For those who are subscribed, thank you for our returning subscribers. And for new ones, you're welcome to subscribing. Like I mentioned, on today's episode, we shed light on access to safe abortions in Cameroon. And with me is a professional in the medical field with 14 years of practice as an obstetrician gynecologist. Thank you so much, Dr. Ojong Samuel, for accepting my invitation.
Thanks for having me, Renette.
Yeah.
It's my pleasure.
You know, I am so happy that you accepted, because reaching out to you and proposing this subject, I was skeptical because a lot of people might not want to talk about it.
No, I'm okay. I'm good. It's part of what I do. And so it's okay to talk to you and to talk to your audience.
Yeah. So how has your week been? How's your week been?
Crazy, very crazy. First, I must indicate I'm on vacation. Like you know, I'm based currently in Kinshasa. And I'm just trying to catch up with all the rest I haven't had over the last year.
The other day, I was actually reading through, because I read a lot. As a journalist, I do a lot of research and make sure that I have the right sources for whatever topic I want to treat. I was reading through an article on Home Angle Media, and it talked about a story of a 15-year-old Ethner who almost died from attempted unsafe abortion. I mean, with your years of experience, do you come across such cases?
Unfortunately, those cases are frequent. And I'll never forget a case which happened while I worked in the Northwest over more than a decade ago.
Cameroon?
In Cameroon. And it actually happened at a friend's hospital. Okay. And there is this young schoolgirl who effectively was pregnant and had gone to an unskilled provider. We don't even think the person was a healthcare professional. Yeah. And she went to request for an abortion service, unknown to her parents. And whatever they did resulted in a perforation of her uterus. She didn't know. And so she came to the hospital complaining of pain. And at some point, she left the ward and went to the bathroom. Yeah. Apparently, she would have felt something bulging in her vagina. Yeah. And she sent her finger and kept on pulling. And actually, she was pulling out her own intestines.
Oh my God. And
then she lost consciousness in the toilet, and then colleagues were alerted.
Yeah.
She had a massive major surgery. She made it. Her life was saved, but I think the complications were far and beyond. I wouldn't know where she is today. But just to say, she lost a huge chunk of her intestinal gut. And as of then, she really needed special nutritional services to adapt to her new situation. So those cases, yes, it's unfortunate. We're against them. We decry them, but they occur quite frequently in our setting, yes.
Currently, I read an article on Home Angle still, the same article I was talking about, the Society of Gynecologists in Cameroon. They are actually making moves for the abortion law to be amended. How harsh is that law in Cameroon?
So before I answer that question, there is two things I need to specify on. First, I need to insist that the opinions expressed here are my opinions and not the opinions of UNICEF where I work. Yes. It's very important. And secondly, as a member of the Cameroon Society of Obstetrics and Gynecology, I have to precise that I am not their mouthpiece, and so I'll be strictly stating my opinion on the subject.
Thank you.
From a global viewpoint, when it comes to abortion care services and legalities, it's good to state that there are 6 possible options, right? First, you have countries where abortions are completely prohibited. No excuse, no explanation. Second class, we have countries in which abortions are permitted to save the life of a
the
woman.
mother. Mm-hmm.
Third, countries in which abortions are permitted to either save her life or preserve her physical health.
Yeah.
The fourth class is countries in which abortions are permitted to save her life or preserve physical or mental health.
Mm-hmm.
The fifth class is countries in which abortions are permitted for life-saving purposes, physical and mental health, or even socioeconomic purposes.
Okay.
And the sixth group of countries is countries where abortions are free. So there's access to comprehensive abortion services irrespective of reason, actual will. Cameroon falls into that class, so it will depend on which law you want to look at.
Okay.
If we want to look at our penal code, specifically sections 337 and 339, Cameroon falls in among those countries which permit abortion in cases where we're trying to save the physical health
of a
mother, or also in cases of rape. There, abortion is permitted.
Yeah.
However, we know there is also a text that says that when Cameroon ratifies international conventions, then international conventions take priority over national laws.
Yeah.
And Cameroon is signatory to the African Charter, the protocol to the African Charter on the protection of and promotion of women's rights, which is also known as the Maputo Protocol. And the Maputo Protocol looks both at the physical and mental health preservation of a woman as a condition for abortion.
Yeah.
So, in as much as the Maputo Protocol is not fully enforced
in
Cameroon, again, I want to indicate that the Maputo Protocol is not an abortion protocol, but it actually lists 21 rights of a woman. We can say that abortions are not illegal in Cameroon, but they are regulated.
Okay, regulated. For a woman in the rural region, because we understand that the penal code equally gives access to safe abortions, in a case like you mentioned, to save the life of a mother. But she needs to have access to at least 2 members of the chambers to approve her abortion. For a woman in the rural region who has been, for instance, raped, and she doesn't want to have this child, it's difficult for her to have access to these 2 members of the chambers. What can be done in such a situation?
Okay, so I need to clarify again some incoherencies.
Yeah.
We said there are 2 situations. First, when the woman's physical health, when pregnancy poses a threat to life or physical health of the mother. And second, in conditions of rape. Now, if we are in the first case, which is the situation where the woman's health and life are in danger.
She's been raped.
Irrespective of rape.
Okay.
The woman is pregnant and the pregnancy poses a threat to her life or her health. In that case, the law requires that 2 sitting doctors
from the National Council,
from the Medical Council, especially from the Society of Obstetrics and Gynecology, where possible, should attest that that pregnancy is actually a threat to her life. And there are mechanisms in terms of who they write to. So they write to the council, to the medical order, they also write to the Minister of Health prior to terminating the pregnancy. In the case of rape, the woman doesn't need 2 medical doctors to attest. But this time around, we need the judgment of a competent court who attests that the accusation of rape is actually valid, because rape is not a medical diagnosis, it's a legal diagnosis.
Yes.
So once rape is confirmed, then the woman can have access to safe abortion care services. Of course, it's good to state, whether for one or the other, the administrative bottlenecks mean many women sometimes experience huge delays, even where the law permits for abortion. And most of the time, by the time the decisions are made or are tested upon, then she is probably in a pregnancy window, which could raise huge ethical issues as far as abortions are concerned, or she herself might no longer be ready to terminate the pregnancy.
Wow, that's quite clear right now. And what if a woman passes away in the course of a safe abortion process? Who takes the blame?
So it's good to, first of all, tell our audience what's a safe abortion. A safe abortion, very simply put, is 3 things. First, it is carried out by a skilled provider. So that is someone who is trained. Secondly, it's carried out in the right kind of environment. And third, the appropriate technique is used. Because depending on the gestational age, whatever technique is used is properly regulated.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, if any of these three conditions are not duly respected, then we cannot conclude on a safe abortion. The biggest problem from a public health perspective is not the safe abortions. Because by the very word safe, it means we do not expect complications.
Of course.
However, we must tell the truth. Like for all medical procedures, even following a safe abortion, we could have complications.
Of course.
Okay. The biggest problem is with the unsafe abortions. So those which are carried out by unskilled providers, those carried out in the wrong setting, or those which are carried out with the wrong technique. Those are the abortions that expose women to complications, including the loss of life.
I was coming to that immediately. I mean, what are the medical risks involved in unsafe abortions?
Oh, there are multiple. You could have women, the most common is hemorrhage. So most of the time, the women come over to the hospital because they are bleeding profusely. You could have retention of products of conception. So it's not, the uterus is not completely emptied. You could have organ trauma.
Like the lady you mentioned.
Uterine perforation, digestive organ perforation, different types of pelvic trauma. You could have infections. That's usually the case with abortions carried out in the wrong setting, where infection prevention procedures are not respected.
Yes.
We could have also loss of life. But I think there is an aspect people don't look into very much, which is the mental health complications linked to one losing their baby voluntarily or not. People usually think when a woman voluntarily requests for a termination of pregnancy, it means mental health post-procedure is assured. No. There are huge sources of evidence that show that even after a voluntary termination, women, depending on their sociocultural context, will go through windows of guilt, windows of self-condemnation, windows of self-judgment, windows of loneliness, especially considering what could have pushed her to request for a voluntary termination of pregnancy. So there is all these complications we could have.
So talking about where women can have access to safe abortions, where can they go to? Who should they look up to?
So that's another interesting question. There is two sides to the coin.
Yes.
We have what we call comprehensive abortion care services. And we have what we call post-abortion care services. By post-abortion care services, we're implying all services offered to a woman who has suffered the loss of a pregnancy before full viability. Okay, she could be bleeding, she could be having a fever, she could be having just any problem. Okay, and normally speaking, in Cameroon, every district hospital, or at least every medicalized health center and above, should be able to reach out with different components of these services, because the services are far and varied. Okay. When it comes to comprehensive abortion care, what we're implying is not just managing complications, but providing all services related to abortion care, including the voluntary termination of pregnancy outside or within the legal boundaries.
Yes.
Now, within the legal boundaries, depending on on the reason why we have to terminate the pregnancy, then the level of hospital might have to be determined by healthcare provider. So that's the key word. Let the decision be made
by the healthcare provider.
No. With the support of the healthcare provider.
Okay.
That it's important because a woman makes the decision. It's all about person-centered care, but with the counsel and the guidance of the healthcare provider. We must, however, not forget that our law does not permit for abortions outside the legal window.
Yes.
So I will not be able to tell you where you could have abortion care services outside the legal window in Cameroon. No,
inside the legal window, like you have mentioned, it's okay.
Yes.
But if a woman finds herself in a place where all of this is not available, what can she do? Like, we have seen cases where in rural areas where she knows that she is in danger. For instance, maybe she's having an ectopic pregnancy and her life is in danger, and there is no access to any legal window.
Okay. So another thing with ectopic pregnancies, generally speaking, the pregnancy is out of the uterus. Okay, that's been of an ectopic pregnancy.
Yes.
So an abortion care service won't help her. That's some other thing. But let's imagine that a woman has a legal reason
For termination.
to terminate a pregnancy, and in her immediate setting, she cannot. We'll expect that if there are any healthcare providers in the immediate setting, they should refer her, or that she should be able to travel to the nearest village, center, or town where she could offer the services. And that is some of the things I think SOGOC is trying to decry.
Yeah.
And some of the things I too stand for. We have to make sure that primary healthcare services, including the access to sexual and reproductive health services, are available for all women nationwide, including the most vulnerable women. Unfortunately, it is not always the case. We have a lot of evidence that shows that the equity balance is not the same across the country. Rural settings are least privileged. Refugee camps are not as privileged to receive these services. Adolescent girls are more excluded from these services compared to adult women. Single women are less favored by the services compared to married women. Women with low levels of education don't have the same amount of access compared to women with a good educational status. Women without jobs who have to depend on a husband or family for financial provision are selectively excluded from these services.
Yes.
And it's things we have to tend to address. It's also important for me to state, and this is strictly my opinion,
Yes.
there is persons who believe that we can significantly improve access to abortion care services and therefore improve on the loss of life related to abortion care by changing the law and saying, why don't we just open the window for every woman who wants
to just do what they want to do.
Who wants to do what they want to do. And this perspective is defended by the WHO, which says comprehensive abortion care for all. It's the woman's right to do what she wants to do with her body. That is not my opinion. I think when it comes to maternal health and well-being, or women's health and their well-being, there is no one-stop shop. There is no magic bullet. It should be a holistic thing, right? We should ask ourselves, why do girls who go for abortion, for voluntary termination of pregnancy outside the legal window, request for it? And why do they go towards unsafe services compared to safe services? In Rwanda, there's enough evidence that showed that it was because of the law. Considering the number of girls who were imprisoned, adolescent girls sent to prison, providers sent to prison. In Cameroon, although the law, the penal code says, every woman who subjects herself to an abortion outside the legal window is subject to an imprisonment term from 15 days to a year, or to a fine of 5,000 to 200,000. And this is much worse for the provider. I mean, as a journalist, I'll ask you to tell me if you know of any names of people who have gone to jail because of abortions in Cameroon.
I don't think I've heard that.
So,
yes, I've not heard of any.
In as much as we want to address the law, we should be looking at other things. Stigma, for example.
Yes.
What do we do if a young girl in school is pregnant? Most of the time, nobody asks where the boy is, but the girl is excluded from school.
Yes.
That's a social injustice that needs to be corrected. What do parents do when young girls come back home and say they are pregnant? Culturally, the stigma, the rejection, the exclusion, okay? What about access to family planning services? Can you walk into the nearest health facility and have the comprehensive...
Now, you're already getting into what I wanted to ask you next, which is very vital, because when women do not have access to safe abortions, they turn to local drugstores or even traditional doctors. And usually these people operate illegally and unperturbed. But now what can stakeholders do to make sure that women have real access to these legal centers?
Okay. So what I will say is, and I think I wrote this in one of my papers with Marlene Temerman. Hi, Marlene, if you're listening. Women's care is an insult until it becomes of high quality. Just giving care is not sufficient. It must be of high quality.
Okay.
And to have services of high quality, there is a number of boxes we must tick. They are safe, they are affordable, they are timely, they are equitable, they are respectful of the woman. Okay? And which kind
within
of...
reach too.
Of course, absolutely. You know, they
Yes.
absolutely must be within reach, okay? And what kind of health system can offer these kind of high quality services? It's a health system that is strengthened, which means the workforce is trained and competent. It means the right medications are available and affordable. It also means we have the availability of the right kind of technology, health information management systems are maintained. It means someone is paying for cost of care. It is amazing to know that in 2030 or in 2023, we're still having to pay 90% for our care out of pocket. When a woman wants access to an abortion care service or post-abortion care services, and they have to tell her, Madame, faites d'abord un dépôt de 30,000, that delays her.
Of course, it does.
And, you know, or if she has to go to a hospital and say there's no blood here, but you have to go to this other hospital to get blood products.
And sometimes even having access to blood is another story on its own.
So we have to, that's why I said there's no one-stop shop. If we tick the law and we don't tick all these other things that we identified, women will continue going for unsafe abortion care services and will keep on losing their lives.
Losing lives. In cases where a doctor refuses to actually grant a safe abortions in countries where it is legal, what should be done?
That's one of the most difficult questions to objectively answer. First, because I think I'll be influenced by my personal stance and beliefs.
Yeah.
And it's the same across the board for every physician. Now, on one hand, physicians are supposed to offer person-centered, respectful care. So a woman comes in and you offer her care services within the bounds of the law.
Yes.
On the other hand, the whole notion of conscientious objection permits a physician to be able to withhold care for values that are personal to them. Okay? But in that case, it's expected of the physician to be able to orient the woman or the girl or the client towards a colleague who will offer the services. Now, specifically to abortion care, you have the whole notion of pro-life, pro-choice.
Yeah.
Some literature will tell you don't say pro-life, say anti-choice. Some will say don't say pro-choice, say anti-life. It's really a whole ethical problem about, first question, where does life begin? Okay? In an abortion, are we taking out life or not? I'm not answering that question. I'm just telling you why there is the divide.
Yeah.
Secondly, whose life are we protecting?
Okay.
The woman's life? I was about saying, or the baby's life, but there's opinions which will shoot me for saying that. I'm not supposed to say the baby. I'm supposed to say the embryo or the fetus. But is an embryo or fetus living? Is it alive?
It's alive at the moment. It's in the mother's uterus.
That's your opinion. I have my opinion.
Okay.
By virtue of my opinion, I'll always oppose conscientious objection as a person to terminating a pregnancy. Honestly, have I ever terminated a pregnancy outside the legal bounds? I hope I don't get arrested. Yes, I have.
Okay.
Yes, I have. And as a person, it was difficult living with myself after that. I was a very young physician. I think I was under a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
Right? It was definitely not for financial reasons. And I think that was the moment I told myself I cannot go down this road again.
Anymore.
But I know colleagues who offer the service. And if they're happy with themselves, they can live with themselves and they can save a woman's life. I don't judge anybody. I'm not judge of another man's servant.
I mean, this is not in any way to encourage more abortions. Of course, we are educating and making you understand that you can actually have access to legal abortions if your life is in danger as a mother. You've been practicing for 14 years. What has been your most difficult moment as a physician? That is
a complex one. I've had many difficult moments. I've had many passionate moments. If I had to choose, I will choose what I do. But I think the most difficult, not moment, but the most difficult thing for me
to do
is getting to see how much our health system cannot offer women the quality of care they deserve to have.
Okay.
You know, most of the time, the doctors, and I'm not defending doctors, okay? We have colleagues who absolutely don't deserve to be amongst us, okay? But many times, doctors and all other healthcare providers take a lot of stick for faults which they could do nothing about.
Okay.
Either because they are under-equipped, they are under-motivated, they are overworked. Okay? I've had to consult in my career in one day 50 patients, and it was not one time.
Oh, that.
You cannot provide quality consultations if you're seeing 50 women in one day. It's just not possible.
The ones that come depressed, the ones that come almost dying, all of that.
So I'm certain there's women who would have left and said, he's not caring enough, he doesn't listen enough, he's not patient enough, he's not listening to all the questions. But while I'm with you, spending 15 minutes, another woman is outside complaining and saying, this doctor is taking too much time. She's not the only one,
Yeah.
So we have to really have a holistic approach to improving care for women. But why only women? For everybody who uses our health system. I feel it's such a grave injustice to women that when we talk about their health and well-being, we reduce it to just their reproductive health. Women are so much more complex and so much more important than their ability to conceive or not conceive. Okay?
Yes.
And until women themselves give a voice to all what's happening in the name of women's rights, I think we'll keep on sexualizing them and reproducing and reducing them to just their reproductive potential. And I think it's such a grave injustice.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Doc. I'm sure this has been an enlightening episode for you, and you know what to do in case you need a safe abortion and where to go to. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, goodbye.